Okay, reflecting on the Utah State game after having an opportunity to watch that game film, and I probably was a little remiss in not complimenting Barnes appropriately at the end of the game on Saturday night. I thought that he had probably one of his best games as a collegiate football player. Some of the balls that he threw in the spots that he fit them into, and then obviously the receivers making plays down the field. But I thought he played exceptionally well, and I also think they did some things. And I knew this during the course of the game, schematically, specifically out of unbalanced formations that were, I think, specifically designed to attack how we aligned to that. And that created some conflicts for our linebackers underneath in particular. So I think there was some really, really well-played game by their quarterback, and also a well-schemed game by their offensive coordinator. And I don't think we did as the best job that we could have done in-game adjusting to some of that. That being said, there's some one-on-one opportunities down the field where we had guys covered and they made plays and catches, and that created separation. I think that the way the game started was kind of a womp-womp with our nickel falling down and then catching a long touchdown pass, and then 2 series later we throw an RPO and they're blitzing the C gap, and the guy jumps up and makes a one-handed catch and goes in for the touchdown. And I think from a psychological standpoint, when you're a fragile group like we are, those things are hard to overcome. But I was disappointed in how we competed, and I think that that's a reflection of me having to do a better job of motivating and preparing these guys. And that's what we're all about this week, is taking that next step. We've got a San Jose State team that comes in. It's got a prolific offense. Their quarterback's thrown for almost 3,000 yards. They have one of the top receivers in the country in Scudero. They have 2 other guys. I mean, I think they've got the best trio of wide receivers in the Mountain West Conference between 1, 4, and 10. Those guys are all capable of being game breakers. All 3 of them have over 50 targets. They're a really good football team, and they throw the ball very, very well. And they do run the ball effectively. They got 2 big backs, and their quarterback, Eggert, isn't afraid to pull it down and run it, and they'll run some quarterback draw stuff with him. Defensively, I feel like these guys have the most experienced and talented front 7 that we played within league this year. They have a very, very good group up front on defense. And so I think that combination has been very good for them at times, and then not unlike any other group. When they turn the ball over, they struggle a little bit, and that happened in the Wyoming game, that happened in the Air Force game. But when they're on schedule, and the Scudero kid, I mean, like, this guy is a blazer, man. He can really, really run. He's dynamic with the ball in his hand. They do a good job of getting them the ball in different spots, and he's complemented well by the other 2 primary receivers. And so with that being said, I'm happy to take any questions.
I'm looking at your guys' offense, 14 points per game this year. I guess what's been the biggest issue in terms of being more productive there?
Yeah, well, turnovers is the number 1 issue. It's hard to put points on the board or gain yards when you're turning it over, and we're one of the worst teams in the country in that statistic. And so I think that's the number 1 thing that stands out, is we haven't valued the football the way we need to value the football. I think that, playing a little bit of quarterback roulette hasn't always helped either, like trying to find that mix. And then, on Saturday night, it was really kind of some of the things that bugged us last year. We would get an explosive play and then get called back on a penalty, and so you end up 1st and 15 or 1st and 20. And so our inability to find rhythm and stay on schedule has been a problem, and our inability to possess the football has been a problem. And all of those things lead to an inability to put points on the board, and that's been our biggest issue this year, is finding continuity and rhythm on the offensive side of the ball.
I mean, has that been a surprise to you, just based on, like you've said before, you didn't return a ton of guys, but...
Yeah, I'd say this. Yes, I expected us to score more than 14 points a game, Chris. But I mean, maybe you underestimate, there's some things that happen that, in one day last year, we lost our offensive coordinator, our left tackle, our quarterback, and 2 other starting offensive linemen, whether it was to the player portal or the coaching portal. That had a tremendous impact on our ability to now shift gears late in the process, when we thought, you kind of think what's going on. And we did not replace the talent that we lost at wide receiver. And that, I think, has become a big problem. And so it wasn't that we didn't try. We tripped a lot of guys, including Scudero, and we didn't win those battles. The leading receiver from New Mexico was on our campus. The leading receiver from Utah State was on our campus. The leading receiver from San Jose was on our campus. We weren't able to win those battles. And so we've got to dig a little deeper as we move forward in terms of putting better pieces around our quarterback. And I think that's been the biggest issue. I think offensive line-wise, everybody's kind of got their challenges at this level. Nobody's going to go in there and say, hey, we've got a group of five-star guys playing across the board. And I think that's another challenge, shuffling offensive line coaches midway through fall camp. But I think those guys have responded. I thought, we actually ran the ball pretty effectively when we were staying on schedule against Utah State. And so I think it's not any one thing in particular. It's kind of everything in general on that side of the ball. The first-time play caller, lack of talent around the quarterback, new guys working with the offensive line. I mean, I think you know me well enough to know that I'm not the guy that's going to sit here and make an excuse. It's not good enough, right? But there are some real reasons why that's happening too.
Has there been consideration to change play calling? Who's doing that, or are you, I guess, happy with how that's going and just the pieces aren't there?
I would say this. I examine that very, very closely, both in-game and week by week. I think David's made some really good calls that haven't been executed. I can go back to the Boise game. There's nothing wrong with the wheel route where we have 53 in conflict and he's got to cover Kai Woods. We got to make that throw and catch. And those are things that then you get off schedule, and that it doesn't matter who's calling plays at that point when it's 3rd and 19 and everybody in the stadium knows you're throwing it. That's a little bit different deal. And so I can tell you this. I have my eyes wide open. I'm examining every aspect of this program, including myself. And I would anticipate that there's going to be always going to be movement in the coaching world, right? And that's part of what we're going to be doing. I guess if there's a benefit to the fact that we're not going to be in a bowl game, we're going to be able to address some of our issues right away.
Looking at quarterback this week, do you remain with Carter Jones as the starter? Is that up for debate? I guess, where is that at?
No, I think I mentioned this after the game, but my motivation in that moment was less about whether I thought Carter was going to be able to go out and continue to play and whether I had trust and confidence in him. And it was more about, I want to make sure this young kid doesn't go to a place mentally where he's lost confidence. And I've had multiple conversations with Carter about that, and I have total confidence in his ability to rebound and lead this team this week.
He's had a couple of games where the turnovers are kind of high, obviously, San Diego State, Boise State, and Utah State. I guess, what's going to be the key to him taking care of the ball a little bit better so that you guys can function at a higher level offensively?
Well, I think there's two things. I think one is us staying on schedule, and I also think there's some pieces to this of and let's look at, like, the first interception that he threw this year was against Fresno State on an RPO. Ball was tipped, guy made a play. First interception he threw last night was the same thing. So, understanding that I may have to adjust my arm slot, right? That's not a decision. He's going where he's supposed to go with the ball, right? And even his second interception, that was exactly where he was supposed to go with the ball based on the fact that they had an up front, looked like they were playing cover zero. He had to throw hot because it wasn't going to be protected, and a good call by them. They dropped the edge man on the line of scrimmage. Well, we've got to have other alternate things like, hey, if this happens, we're doing this. And I think some of that is repetition, him seeing it. And I think that's the benefit of, if there's a silver lining here, it's that, when you see those things, this kid does learn. He's a sharp young man. But when you haven't seen that before, how do you respond? Well, hey, I made a mistake. Now the next time I see that, I'm going to be prepared for plan B, so to speak. And so, I think we've got to do a better job of running the ball consistently because that takes pressure off of him, staying on schedule, doing things that he does well within the offense, not asking him to get out of character. And I hate to say it, nobody wants to hear this, but some of that stuff's just freaking bad luck. Literally the safety inserts in the C gap on the run fake. We're throwing the glance behind his head, and the guy jumps up and makes a play. It's a great play by him, but, that's kind of what happens sometimes. And so nobody wants to hear that. I get it. But I have total, I believe in Carter. I feel like this kid is going to be an exceptional player, and we're working through some growing pains right now.
You talked about kind of the mental fragility of the team. I guess the fan base is pretty mentally fragile right now. I know we've asked you kind of like, what's your message to them? But, for those diehards who have had to gone through this last 4 years, and I know only 2 of those are yours, why should they continue to believe in your tenure and, Nevada football heading into the future?
Well, it's a loaded question, Chris. I think that we have work to do here at Nevada, right? And it wouldn't matter if it was Jeff Choate or Vince Lombardi, right? There's work to be done here. You don't have to, you can go to any place that you want to go in the conference and you can see the people that have stretched out in front of Nevada football in investment in facilities and things of that nature. And I think it's going to take somebody that's willing to be tough-minded and to grind through the tough times so that we can get to a place where we are back on top of the heap. And I think there's some things that are going to work in our favor. One is, I've talked about it multiple times, the leadership and investment of our administration. Whether that's the indoor facility or making a commitment to allow us to be more competitive in the modern landscape of rev share. I think there's also continuity that is important, right? Like you might not like what's going on right now, but you want to start over again. I think there's another price to be paid there. And whether you believe that I'm the right guy or not, hopefully you believe that I'm tough enough to deal with it. And I'll persevere through it, and we'll get to the other side of this. The other thing that's kind of playing our favor is conference realignment. I think that we become, more competitive based on who we're competing against week in and week out in the new Mountain West. And nobody wants to hear that either. But that was a choice that was made long before Jeff Choate came to Nevada. Those choices were made before Brian Sandoval became president or Stephanie Rent became AD. There was a conscious decision made at the University of Nevada about the importance of football. And we're paying a price for it right now. And it sucks. I don't want to have to be the guy that lives through it. Trust me when I tell you that. There's nothing more agonizing than going through what we're going through right now. But you got to have conviction. And one thing I know is, in the short run, you get what you get. In the long run, you get what you deserve. And you ain't going to get anything if you quit.
Looking at San Jose State, they seem more talented than the record indicates. I guess what's kind of been some of the trip-ups for them, just in terms of the record maybe not matching what you would see just on the roster?
Turnovers and explosives. Yeah, when they've turned the ball over, they've struggled. When they've given up explosives in the back end, that's been an issue. But I agree. When you look at this team, best wide receiver core in the conference. You can make an argument, best quarterback in the conference, best front seven in the conference. Like, this is a really talented football team that has speed, length, experience. They've got some really good football players. And so, you don't want to catch them on the night where it all comes together. I know that. I think Air Force, obviously, they had a good plan. What they do takes the ball out of the offense's hands, and I think that played well for them. Also, turnovers. That was an issue in that game. And then the same thing happened when they played Wyoming. They turned the ball over and kind of let Wyoming hang around, and Wyoming made some plays, including a punt return for a touchdown that really opened the game up.
What's going to be the key to slowing down the passing attack? Because as you mentioned, that's probably the strength.
I think a lot of people would say, well, you got to get to the quarterback. But when you look at it, really, they haven't given up a lot of sacks. I think he knows exactly where he wants to go with the ball, finds his matchup, and gets the ball out of his hands fast. And so I don't know that pressure is the answer against this particular outfit. I think that it's more about trying to, to camouflage what you're doing on the back end and make him hold the ball a little bit and overlap your coverage. And he has a lot of confidence. He's a very accurate passer, and he's got a lot of confidence in his arm. And so he will push the ball into some tight windows at times. And so I think it's trying to, let him think he's seeing one thing and show him something else. That's really kind of the key to this thing. And then we've got to do a good job of keeping an umbrella on it. They're going to get their yards. They're going to throw for 300-plus yards a game. They've done it to everybody. So it's, can you prevent Scudero from getting a 70-yarder? Can you keep one from catching a jump ball for 50? Can you keep four from taking 165? It's like keeping an umbrella on it, making them earn it, because they're not as good in the red zone. Once you get into the low red, right, where you got to lean on run game a little bit more because the field, the speed and their athleticism is a little bit mitigated because of the space on the field. That's an area where we play pretty good red zone defense, and that's an area where we feel like we can match it up. So they're going to get their yards. We got to cap it off and make sure it's 3-0 when they get in the red zone.
And their quarterback seemed to emerge in the second half of your guys' game last year. That's when they kind of put him in, and he made some big plays. I guess, what do you just remember about, what you saw from him in that game?
I'm like, why hasn't this guy been their starter all along? I guess was the first question that I had. But, it's funny because they've done that a couple times this year with him too, where he's thrown a couple interceptions, and they're like, hey, sit down and think about it almost. And they've given some other guys an opportunity to go. Ironically, the two games most recently that I've watched, Wyoming and Air Force, they lost both those games. And they actually ended up bringing him back in a Wyoming game once it became, hey, we got to have a 2-minute drive to go do this. So I think that's something that is in their DNA. They have high standards for that position, and if they don't live up to them, they're going to make a change. And I don't know that affects him a whole lot psychologically, but I think that's a key is, can you affect him? Because they are a different team without him.
First quarter's been big for you guys. The games you've kept close, been a solid first quarter, and the ones that have gotten away, the first quarter has kind of been disastrous. I guess what's going to be the key to getting off to a fast start and put some pressure on them throughout the entire game?
Well, I think that it's twofold. I think number one is have a good plan going in and execute it. Like the other night, I thought, oh gosh, they tried to run the ball between the tackles on us, stuff them. All right, they get an off-schedule play, and DJ Warnell's hitting the quarterback's arm as he throws it, and the guy goes up and makes a play on the sideline. 2 plays later, our nickel falls down at 7-0. Where it was 3rd and 12, moments ago, right? So it's finishing drives, right? I think that's a part of it, and I think also managing the game from an offensive perspective to where we give our defense a chance. We've got to possess the ball more. I think that's a critical thing, because even when maybe we do give up an explosive pass, or they do get something happens in the kicking game, or whatever may happen, if we can kind of calm it down a little bit by possessing the ball and giving our guys a chance to get the adjustments made on the sideline, regroup a little bit emotionally and mentally, physically get their wind back. That's been kind of a recipe for us. We can weather the storm, so to speak. Like I thought we had a chance to weather the storm on Saturday night, and we got a PI call, which that's going to happen. I didn't agree with the call, but that's the way it goes. We're off the field. It's still 7-0. Let's go play football, right? Well, that ends up being 14-0 the next possession. We throw the pick six, and now this thing's out of hand. And so I think, managing the game to get into the game and then let it play out.